I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine the sound of a heart beating.
Okay.
Not your own heart, but the heart of someone who is hiding just a few feet away from you. Maybe it's in a basement, maybe behind a false wall. It's dark.
You can feel the tension already.
The air is stale,
Yeah.
and you can hear the shallow, terrified breathing of a family, innocent people, maybe refugees, maybe victims of some political purge who you have sworn to protect.
It is a terrifying place to start, but it puts you right in the center of the pressure cooker.
Exactly. You are their only shield. And then it happens, the thing you've been dreading this whole time. There's a pounding on your front door.
Oh, man.
Heavy, aggressive. You open it just a crack, the chain's still on. And outside, you see men with guns. They are sweating, they are angry, and they look you right in the eye. They ask one simple binary question. Are they here?
This is the classic murder at the door scenario.
Yeah.
It's the philosophy 101 nightmare. And the reason it's so famous, I think, is that in that split second, the entire universe of moral complexity just shrinks down to a single choice, A or B. There's no C.
Right. Let's look at the menu. Option A. You tell the truth. You follow the rule that says, lying is a sin or honesty is a virtue. You say, yes, they are downstairs. And because of your commitment to the truth, innocent people are dragged out and, well, we know what happened. Or option B, you lie. You lie your face off. You look those men in the eye and say, no, I haven't seen a soul all day.
And if we were to poll everyone listening right now, in fact, if we polled almost anyone from any culture, anywhere in the world, what do you think the result would be?
It wouldn't even be close. It would be 99.99%. You lie. You lie without hesitating.
Of course you do.
I don't think I know a single person, no matter how religious or ethically rigid they claim to be, who would say, well, honesty is the best policy, so I guess I have to hand over the refugees.
It would seem monstrous to do that.
It would. In that moment, your gut reaction is just screaming at you. It's screaming that the result saving human lives justifies the method lying.
It seems incredibly obvious in that specific context. The end, which is preserving life, justifies the means, which is deception. But here is the problem, and this is what we are really digging into today.
This is the knot.
This is the knot. We live our lives torn between two completely contradictory slogans.
I was thinking about this when I was going through this stack of articles for this dive, because on one hand, we have that scenario where we say, yes, absolutely, the ends justify the means. But then just, flip on the news. How often do we hear the exact opposite?
Constantly. All the time.
We hear a CEO gets caught cooking the books to save the company from bankruptcy, or a politician runs a nasty smear campaign to win an important election because they think the other guy is, dangerous.
And they always say it's for a good reason.
Always. And what do we say? We shout, the ends do not justify the means. We treat it like it's a sacred commandment.
Precisely. We have these two massive moral intuitions, and they're just wrestling with each other inside our heads.
So which is it?
Well, on one side, results matter. A lot. On the other side, rules matter. And that is the mission of this deep dive. We're going to put that tension right under the microscope.
We're going to find out if we're all just hypocrites or if there's actually a coherent way to navigate this.
Yeah.
The core question is, can good goals, really noble, important goals like saving lives or preventing a disaster, can they ever make bad or questionable methods morally okay?
Or are there some actions that are simply wrong? Full stop, no matter what good might come from them. Is there a hard line?
Yeah, a red line you just don't cross.
And I want to be clear about the stakes here. I know we started with a philosophy thought experiment, but the sources we're looking at today aren't just talking about abstract theory.
No, this is real world stuff.
We are talking about the decisions made in war rooms, in hospital ICUs, in police interrogation cells, and even in our own kitchens when we're deciding how much to tell our spouses or our kids.
This is about the fabric of how we treat one another. It's about the logic we use to justify our actions, big and small, every single day.
It really is. And the source material for today's dive frames this as a battle between two dominant families of thought.
Okay.
On one side, you have the intuition that consequences matter. This is the consequentialist view. We care about the bottom line, less suffering, more life, more well-being.
That's the calculator view, right?
It's a great way to put it.
If I can push a button and the math says 1 million saved, I push the button. I don't care what the button does. I just care what the button achieves, the outcome.
Exactly. But then pushing back against that, you have the other intuition, The one that says some things are inherently wrong.
A gut feeling.
The gut feeling that there are lines you cannot cross even if the math looks good on paper. Things like torture, betrayal, cruelty. This is the deontological view.
So we have the calculator versus the rule book.
That's a good way to frame it. The calculator cares about the output. The rule book cares about the action itself, regardless of the output.
Okay, let's start with the calculator. Let's really get into this consequentialist view. Now, we hear terms like utilitarianism thrown around a lot in the readings. Is that basically what we're talking about here?
Yes, utilitarianism is the most famous version of this. But let's strip away the academic jargon for a second.
Please.
At its core, the consequentialist view is extremely logical. It argues that actions aren't good or bad in a vacuum. You can't just look at an action like lying or cutting someone with a knife and say it's wrong without knowing the context.
Right, because cutting someone with a knife is bad if I'm mugging them in an alley.
Horrible.
But good if I'm a surgeon removing a burst appendix.
Exactly. The action is neutral. The consequence is what defines the morality. It's all a calculation. The source material emphasizes that for a consequentialist, the primary moral duty you have is to maximize well-being.
So if I'm holding the calculator, the rule is pretty simple. If an action creates more overall good, more happiness, better health, more lives saved than the alternative, then it's justified.
That's the idea.
Even if the method looks a little ugly.
Ugly is the key word there.
Yeah.
Because the strongest argument for this side, and I think this is where a lot of listeners might find themselves nodding along, is that focusing too much on moral purity can actually be dangerous.
Dangerous how? Usually we think of purity as a good thing. We strive for it.
Well, imagine a person who is obsessed with never doing anything wrong. They never lie. They never break a promise. They never harm anyone directly. They have a perfect moral record.
Sounds like a pretty good person so far.
It does. But because they are so rigid, so focused on their own clean slate, they allow terrible things to happen around them that they could have stopped.
Ah, so this goes right back to the Nazi at the door.
Exactly. If I stand there and say, I cannot tell a lie because lying is a sin, and because of that a family is massacred, I've kept my rule, but I've lost the people. I've failed them.
You might have clean hands regarding the lie. You didn't lie.
That's true. But are your hands clean regarding the result? The consequentialist would say no, absolutely not. Your hands are covered in blood because you had the power to prevent a tragedy and you chose your own rule following instead.
That's a heavy accusation. It frames rule following as almost selfish, like a form of moral vanity.
The sources describe this as being morally innocent, but morally cold. And it raises a very uncomfortable question. Is your primary duty to follow a set of abstract rules written in a book somewhere? Or is your duty to the actual living, breathing people whose lives and pain are at stake?
Put that way, it's really hard to argue against. It feels narcissistic to prioritize my own spiritual hygiene over someone else's survival. I need to feel good about myself, so sorry, you have to die. It's an awful thought.
That is exactly the critique. And here's where it gets really interesting and I think very practical. We often pretend that the ends justify the means is this villainous idea.
Totally. We associate it with Machiavelli or, movie villains blowing up cities to save the planet.
Right. But if you actually look at how our society functions, how we organize ourselves, we accept this logic all the time. We rely on it. We couldn't function without it.
The source material lists a few of these, and when you see them all laid out, it's undeniable.
It really is.
Let's take war, for example, specifically war in self-defense.
Right. Let's look at that without the patriotic gloss for a moment. War, by its very definition, involves killing people.
Young people, mostly.
Young people. It involves destroying infrastructure, terrifying children, ruining economies. It is objectively a terrible means. If you looked at those actions in isolation, killing a young man who was drafted into an army, someone who might not even want to be there, it's horrific.
But we accept it. Why?
Because the end, stopping an aggressor, preventing a genocide, protecting national sovereignty, is viewed as justified. We say, we have to do this bad thing to stop an even worse thing.
We run the calculation.
We run the calculation. We trade lives for freedom or security. We weigh the costs.
Or look at medicine. The sources bring up the history of medical trials. Now, obviously, we have ethics boards today, and we've cleaned this up a lot, but the core concept remains.
It does.
We allow people to participate in trials where they might get hurt. We give people experimental drugs with unknown side effects.
And historically, it was even starker. Think about the development of the first vaccines. You are literally injecting someone with a disease. That is a harm. You are deliberately making someone sick.
But why do we do it? Because the end, curing smallpox, stopping a plague, developing a COVID vaccine is so incredibly valuable that it outweighs the risk to the few individuals in the trial.
We treat individuals as participants in a calculation for the greater good. And importantly, they usually consent to this. They agree to take on that risk.
That's a key point, but the underlying logic is still there.
It is. Even look at police interrogation. We allow psychological pressure, we allow deception, we allow police to lie to suspects.
That's something a lot of people don't know. In many jurisdictions, police are legally allowed to lie to you during an interrogation.
They can say, your friend already confessed and blamed it all on you, even if he didn't say a word. That is a bald-faced lie.
But we allow it because the end, solving the crime, getting the murderer off the street, is seen as justifying those rougher means.
We want the result. And we accept that getting that result might require some methods that make us a bit uncomfortable.
And we all just lived through a massive global example of this exact logic.
The pandemic.
Pandemic measures. That's perhaps the most relatable example right now. We saw this play out in real time in every country.
Think about the logic that was used. Governments instituted quarantines. They locked down entire cities. They closed businesses, schools, churches.
And that harms individual interests. I mean, that's not even debatable. People lost their livelihoods. They lost time with dying relatives. Kids' education suffered. Mental health plummeted. Those are real, tangible harms.
Absolutely. They were devastating for many.
They were. I remember the debates. But society, collectively, looked at the math. We said, the end stopping the spread of the virus, saving the healthcare system from collapsing, protecting the vulnerable, justifies these harsh means.
We made a utilitarian calculation on a global scale.
We did. We accepted immense short-term pain for what we hoped would be a greater long-term good.
Exactly. And if we couldn't make those kinds of trade-offs, society would just grind to a halt. You couldn't build a bridge because construction is dangerous and someone might fall. You couldn't drive a car because of the risk of accidents. We accept risk and harm for the sake of the result.
So for the consequentialist, the argument is that we are already doing this. We're just uncomfortable admitting it sometimes.
Yes. We admit in practice that harming some interest to protect a greater good isn't just an option. It is often necessary for civilization to function.
It's a pragmatic view. It's focused on actually making things better, not just feeling good about our own choices.
That's the argument. It appeals to our pragmatism. It appeals to our desire to actually fix things rather than just posturing about how good we are while the world burns.
So that's the case for the ends. It's practical, it's focused on results, and it prevents that moral coldness you mentioned. But I can almost hear the but coming.
There's always a but.
Because there is a very powerful reason we have that other slogan. There is a reason we recoil when we hear someone say, I did it for the greater good.
And that brings us to the deontological view. This is the no, the ends do not justify the means camp.
The rule book.
The rule book.
Right.
This is often associated with philosophers like Immanuel Kant, but it's also deeply embedded in most religious ethics and, crucially, in modern human rights law.
Okay, let's unpack this side, because I think this is where our gut instinct about right and wrong really lives. When I tell my kids not to hit, I don't say, don't hit, because the statistical outcome of hitting is suboptimal for our family's overall well-being.
No, of course not. That would be absurd.
I say, don't hit because hitting is wrong, period.
Right. The core belief here is that some actions are wrong in themselves. Intrinsically wrong. It doesn't matter what the math says. It doesn't matter if you can save 5 people by killing one innocent person. The act of killing that innocent person is fundamentally inherently wrong.
The sources list some heavy examples here, things that are just hard to even talk about. Torturing an innocent person.
Yeah.
Deliberately executing someone you know is innocent to make a point. Using people as mere tools.
That concept of using people as tools is really the anchor of this entire argument.
Yeah.
It's often called the categorical imperative in philosophy, but let's keep it simple.
Please.
If you adopt the view that the ends always justify the means, you fundamentally change the status of a human being.
How so? What does that mean?
A person stops being a person with inherent dignity and rights, and they become a variable in an equation, an object, a resource to be used.
Like a chess piece on a board. You can sacrifice a pawn to save the king.
Exactly. In a chess game, that's a smart move. It's good strategy. But humans aren't pawns. The deontological view argues that every single human being has a dignity that cannot be traded away. You can't say, well, Bob is a nice guy, but if we harvest his organs, we can save 5 other people, so sorry, Bob, it's for the greater good.
That's the classic transplant surgeon thought experiment, isn't it?
It is, and it's a powerful one. Imagine you are a healthy person. You walk into a hospital for a routine checkup. The doctor comes back and says, "Great news. You're a perfect match. We have 5 people dying in the ICU who need a heart, a liver, 2 kidneys, and a lung. We're going to kill you, harvest your organs, and save those 5 people."
The math works. 5 lives saved, 1 life lost. That's a net gain of 4 lives. A strict utilitarian calculator would have to say, do it.
The math is impeccable, but any normal human being would scream, "You can't do that. I have rights. I have a right to live." You wouldn't accept the math. You would appeal to your inherent dignity, your personhood.
And that's the wall the deontologists are building. They are saying there are some things you simply cannot do to a person, no matter how good the reason is. You can't treat them like a thing.
But there is another argument for this side that I find even more compelling and historically much more terrifying.
What's that?
It's the slippery slope argument.
This one really stuck out to me in the reading because history is just littered with terrible things done by people who were absolutely convinced they were the good guys.
It is the most dangerous trap in human history. Almost every horrific act, genocide, political purges, the Inquisition, you name it, was justified by a higher end.
The list in the source material is chilling. National security. How many times have we heard that used to excuse abuse, torture, illegal surveillance?
Thousands. Or the revolution, we must break a few eggs to make an omelet. Or the purity of the nation. Or religious truth.
Or even the vague, all-encompassing greater good of humanity.
The mechanism of erosion here is subtle but deadly. It's rarely a supervillain twirling a mustache saying, "I want to do evil." It's a leader saying, "Look, we can cross this moral line just this once because the goal is so important, the stakes are too high."
This is an emergency. The normal rules don't apply right now.
Exactly. But once you accept that premise that you can suspend morality for a good cause, you have broken the seal. You've established a precedent.
It's like breaking a diet, isn't it? Just one cookie won't hurt. But in this case, the cookie is, I don't know, suspending habeas corpus or allowing enhanced interrogation techniques.
Precisely. And what starts as a rare exception for an extreme emergency becomes routine. It normalizes the transgression.
How does that happen?
Well, if you can justify torture to save a city, can you justify it to save a neighborhood, a building? What about to prevent a significant financial loss that might destabilize the economy? The threshold just lowers and lowers and lowers.
It creeps.
It creeps. Saying yes too easily to the idea that the ends justify the means opens the door to systematic abuse and cruelty.
So the argument here is that we need these hard no rules, these deontological rules, as a firewall. Almost like a constitutional protection against our own worst instincts.
A firewall is the perfect metaphor because we can't trust ourselves to do the math correctly in the heat of the moment. We are biased calculators.
We want the result we want, so we'll fudge the numbers to get it.
We can't trust our math, and this is the third point, which I think is really personal. We can't trust what it does to our character. This is the "you become what you do" argument.
I loved this point. Because we often look at the decision as an external thing. I push the button, the bad thing happens out there, the good result happens out there. But we forget that I am the one pushing the button. It changes me.
Yes. Actions shape character. We are not static beings. If you are a leader or even just a regular person and you regularly lie or betray or act cruelly for a good cause, you are transforming yourself. You're becoming a liar, a betrayer, a cruel person.
You might achieve your good end. Maybe you win the war. Maybe you save the company. But you've become the kind of person you never wanted to be. And you've shaped the culture around you to be one that accepts those behaviors. You've taught your team that this is how we win.
So on one side, we have the fear of moral coldness, letting people die because we're obsessed with our rules. On the other side, we have the fear of moral corruption, becoming monsters in the pursuit of paradise.
And that leaves us, well, kind of stuck in the middle. Because I think most listeners right now are nodding along to both sides of this. I know I am.
It's a true dilemma.
I don't want to be a rule-obsessed robot who lets the family in the basement die, but I also don't want to be a ruthless operator who justifies anything and everything in the name of a goal.
And that is because reality isn't always yes or always no. We have to live and make decisions in the gray area.
Let's talk about that gray area. Because the sources do a good job of distinguishing between easy cases and hard cases.
Right, and that's helpful. We started with an easy case, lying to the murderer to save a family. Almost everyone agrees there. Ends justify the means. Easy, yes.
And we have some pretty easy no cases on the other side. torturing children to get information. I don't care what the information is, that just feels fundamentally off limits.
It's a line that for most people is non-negotiable. Or bombing a school full of civilians just to send a political message to an enemy government.
Again, easy no. Or the scapegoat scenario we touched on. Killing one innocent person just to calm down an angry mob and prevent a riot. Most of us intuitively say no, even if the riot would kill more people.
It feels like a fundamental violation.
So the struggle isn't usually at those extremes. It's in the messy middle. It's finding where the line is. How do philosophers try to solve this? Because we can't just flip a coin every time we have a hard choice.
Well, one major approach that the source material highlights is the concept of thresholds and side constraints. It's an attempt to kind of combine the two views to get the best of both worlds.
Okay, let's break those down. What is a threshold in this context?
Think of it as a rule that holds until the stakes get impossibly high. So the default rule is do not lie or do not harm innocents. We follow that rule 99% of the time. It's our operating system. But if we hit a threshold of catastrophe, say a nuclear bomb is about to go off in a city of millions and the only way to find it is to break a rule, then the consequences are so massive that they override the rule.
Okay, so it's like a safety valve on a pressure cooker. The rules apply to normal life, but if the world is ending, the math wins.
Exactly. It acknowledges that rules are important for a functioning, decent society, but survival is also important. It prevents that moral coldness where you let the world burn for the sake of a rule.
But isn't that dangerous? It sounds a little like the slippery slope again. Who decides when the threshold is met? Couldn't I just say, well, me losing my job is a catastrophe for me, so I can lie on my resume?
That is absolutely the risk. And that's why you have to pair it with the second idea, side constraints. These are the red lines. The idea that there are still some means that are never, ever allowed, no matter how high the threshold goes, no matter how catastrophic the outcome might be.
So even if the world is ending, there are things we just won't do.
For many thinkers, yes. For example, the deliberate, sadistic torture of an innocent child. Many would argue there is no threshold of consequences that makes that acceptable. It is a side constraint, a moral wall you cannot and will not breach. It defines the limits of our humanity.
So the mixed view is something like this. Consequences matter a lot, so we should always try to achieve good outcomes. But T, not all means are available to us. We have a toolbox, but some tools like torture or genocide or scapegoating are glued shut. We can't use them.
That's a very healthy way to look at it. But there is one more layer to this gray area that I think is incredibly powerful, especially for anyone who has ever been in a leadership position.
Okay.
It's the concept of dirty hands.
Dirty hands. It sounds like a crime novel, but in philosophy, this is about the tragedy of leadership, right?
It is. The dirty hands problem arises when a leader faces a choice where every single option involves doing something morally wrong. There is no good choice. There is no clean exit.
The sources give the example of a military strike. A leader knows a terrorist group is planning a massacre in a town square. The only way to stop them is a drone strike on their compound. But that drone strike will kill innocent civilians who live nearby. There's no way to avoid it.
Right. Now, walk through the options. If the leader does nothing, they allow the massacre to happen. That's a moral failure. They failed in their duty to protect their people.
Okay.
If leader orders the strike, they kill innocents in the blast radius. That is also a moral failure. They killed innocent people.
So they are damned if they do, damned if they don't. Their hands will be dirty no matter what.
Exactly. The dirty hands insight is this. The leader chooses the terrible means, the strike, to prevent the greater horror, the massacre. However, and this is the crucial part, they should not pretend that what they did was good.
Ah, I see. So the standard ends justify the means person, the pure calculator, might say, I saved 1,000 people and only killed 10 civilians, so I'm a hero. Good job, me. Statistically, I crushed it.
Yes. They wipe their hands clean on the spreadsheet. They sleep like a baby. But the dirty hands view says, no, you did what was necessary. You made the least awful choice. But you still killed 10 innocent people. You should not feel proud. You should feel guilty.
Wow.
You should grieve. You should regret that the world forced that choice on you. Your hands are dirty, and you should feel the grime.
That is such a subtle but important distinction. It's not about saying everything is fine because the math worked out. It's saying this was the least awful option, but my hands are still dirty, and that's a tragedy.
And that guilt, that feeling of tragedy is what keeps you human. It's what ensures that you don't do it lightly next time. Prevents that slippery slope we talked about earlier. If you feel terrible about ordering that strike, you won't be so quick to order the next one.
That's heavy. but it feels profoundly true to reality. Sometimes there are no white hats, just different shades of gray.
Precisely. And acknowledging that tragedy, that moral cost, is a sign of maturity.
Now, I want to pivot because we've been talking about drone strikes and ticking time bombs, and I know our listeners are probably, hopefully, not deciding whether to order a drone strike today.
We can certainly hope not.
But this question, do the ends justify the means? It shows up in our boring, regular, everyday lives constantly. It's not just for generals and presidents.
It really isn't. We face what the sources call softer versions of this dilemma every single day.
Okay, let's run through a few of these because I think this is where it will really connect for people. Scenario 1, the white lie.
The classic. You tell a friend they look great in an outfit that is actually questionable.
We've all done it.
Or you tell your partner you absolutely love the dinner they cooked when it's burnt to a crisp.
The end is sparing their feelings. The means is lying. We justify it immediately. We say, I'm being nice, I'm being kind. But are we?
The deontological view, the rulebook view, would ask a different question. It would ask, are you protecting them, or are you disrespecting their right to the truth? Are you treating them like a child who can't handle reality?
That hits home. When you put it that way, it feels a lot more patronizing. Like I'm saying, I know better than you what you can handle, so I'll manipulate your reality for you.
And practically, if they find out you lied, and people usually do, the trust is broken. So the end, making them feel good, might be temporary, but the damage to the relationship is long-term. You might actually be prioritizing your own comfort, which is avoiding an awkward conversation, over their growth or your long-term trust.
Okay, that's a good one. Or take scenario 2, breaking promises. This happens all the time in business and social circles.
All about time.
You promise to meet a friend for coffee, or you promise a colleague you'll finish a project by Friday, but then something better or more urgent comes up.
Maybe a bigger client calls with an emergency, or maybe you're just tired and want to stay home and watch Netflix.
And you do the math. You say, well, if I break this promise to my friend, I can help this other client who pays more, or I can help my kid with their homework. You justify the betrayal of the promise by the better outcome.
Right. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are you actually doing what's necessary for the greater good? Or are you just rationalizing your own selfishness? Are you just doing what is convenient for you in that moment?
That brings us to the third scenario, which I think is a big one, manipulation. Specifically, manipulation for their own good.
This is a huge one for parents, for managers, for doctors. You withhold information or you frame things in a manipulative way to get someone to do what you think is best for them.
A manager might say, I'm not telling my team about the potential layoffs yet because I need them to stay focused and hit their targets for the product launch. It's for their own good that the launch succeeds.
Exactly. You justify the deception because the end, a successful launch, maybe saving the company, is a good one. But what are you really doing? You are controlling them. You are taking away their agency to make their own informed decisions about their own careers.
You're treating them like tools in your machine, not like partners in the enterprise.
You are. And this leads to the biggest danger the sources warn us about when we bring this down to a personal level. Rationalization.
We are masters of self-deception.
We are the Michael Jordans of self-deception. That is the ultimate takeaway here. When we use the ends justify the means in our daily lives, we almost always overestimate how noble our ends are.
We think we are saving the world, but really we're just trying to save our weekend.
We're saving a reputation, or just avoiding an awkward, difficult conversation. We use the grand, heroic logic of the greater good to cover up the much more mundane logic of the path of least resistance.
So based on the readings, we have a kind of checklist for the listeners. If you find yourself about to do something a little shady for a good reason, what should you ask yourself?
First, and this requires some real honesty, am I truly pursuing a greater good? Or am I just pursuing my own comfort, my own power, or my own image? Be brutally honest. If the good outcome mostly just benefits you, you should be very suspicious of your motives.
Okay, what's number 2?
Second, have I really considered all the alternative? Is there a way to achieve this goal without using the dirty means? Usually we jump to the easy, dirty way because we're too lazy or scared to find the clean, harder way.
And third,
and maybe this is the most important one of all, am I crossing a line I would regret if someone else did it to me?
the golden rule. If your boss lied to you for your own good, would you thank them for it? Or would you feel betrayed?
Exactly. If the answer is, I would feel betrayed, then you probably shouldn't do it to your employees. It's a simple test, but it cuts through a lot of the self-serving rationalization.
So let's bring this all home. Let's synthesize. We've looked at the consequentialists who say results matter above all. We've looked at the deontologists who say rules and dignity matter above all. We've looked at the messy middle with thresholds and dirty hands. What is the mature moral view that comes out of all this?
I think a mature view acknowledges the tension without trying to delete it. It says, yes, consequences matter greatly. Ignoring the results of your actions is irresponsible. You cannot be a moral narcissist who lets the world burn just to keep your own hands clean.
We have to care about the family in the basement. We have to care about the victims.
Yes, you must. But at the same time, we need moral limits. We need those side constraints. We need to agree as individuals and as a society that there are certain things we will not do to achieve our goals.
Things like systematic torture, scapegoating the innocent, cruelty for its own sake, those have to be off the table.
Correct. Because without those red lines, we slide down that slippery slope until we don't recognize ourselves anymore. We become the monsters we were fighting.
It's about balance, then. Caring about the destination, but also caring profoundly about how we get there.
And understanding that sometimes there is no clean answer. Sometimes you will have dirty hands. And if you do, the mature thing is to own that, not explain it away. You should carry the weight of it.
That is a powerful place to land. It's not a happy, easy ending necessarily, but it's an honest one.
It is. Morality is often about navigating tragedy, not finding perfection.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a few things to chew on. These aren't easy questions, but hey, that's why you listen to a deep dive.
Let's hear them.
Question 1. Think of a time you bent a rule for a good reason. Look back at it now with what we've talked about. Were you truly serving a greater good, or were you actually just serving your own convenience or maybe your own fear? Be honest with yourself.
That's a tough one. It requires real self-reflection.
Question 2. What are your personal red lines? What is something you would never do, no matter how much money or power or good was on the other side? If you don't know your red lines now, you won't find them in the heat of the moment.
Absolutely. You have to define them before the pressure is on.
Yeah.
You have to decide who you are in the calm.
And finally, a broader one. How can you care both about what you want to achieve and the kind of person you become in achieving it? Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. The results change, but your character stays with you.
Knowledge is most valuable when we use it to question our own assumptions. And questioning our own moral shortcuts is probably the most valuable and difficult work we can do.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
A pleasure as always.
See you next time.